My name is Dan Hernandez. I'm here from Queens College, and I'm the Director of Sports Medicine. Specifically, I started my career as an athletic trainer. It's not a very well-known profession by name, but many people know exactly what it is. I always kind of characterize it as whenever you see an injury on a football field or an injury in any sports event, they are the individuals that you see running out to help the team. That is not normally a doctor. Sometimes it is, but it's actually normally the team's medical staff, and that medical staff is comprised of athletic trainers. We deal with the care of injuries, planning out prevention, designing recovery, and the full rehabilitation process of any injuries that may cause during an athletic season or training. We often coordinate with doctors to plan surgeries and things like that, and then plan their rehab coming out of those surgeries have the best outcome. Again, this is a profession that I am very fond of, and I've been doing for, I guess, 10 years now. And now we're going to kind of share some of the lesser known secrets that kind of help us do our jobs to the best of our ability. What helps us do our jobs to the best of our ability is really mastering the idea of recovery. More often than not, individuals get injured because their recovery is off or they're overworking. Any way you look at it, by maximizing an individual's recovery, we basically are able to keep them on the field and keep them participating and able to do everything that they'd like to do for a little bit longer and be a little bit more active. We're going to be going over just kind of an overview here, just some common mistakes that we see very often, popular tools in the trade for recovery, the importance of a warm-up and a cool-down, also maintaining your gear, and in play, the role diet plays in recovery, and then we're going to tie everything together at the end to kind of show you what that all means. To start out, common mistakes are pretty simple to go over. I think the most common mistake is people not treating recovery as something that is something you have to do. Recovery is actually an active event, and recovery does not count as sitting down at home doing nothing. Similar to what many doctors will tell you, physical therapists, I myself, recovery is an active event. You're helping your body recover from the trauma that you did to it. You can't always do that by just resting. The body will do a fantastic job of healing on its own and rebuilding and remaking all those structures that you've broken down for while you feel sore or possibly injured. But you can do an active role in your recovery and greatly expedite the process so that you can feel your best as often as you possibly can. When we talk about the common mistakes that are commonly had, besides not having a bigger role in your quote-unquote recovery, we're looking primarily at not doing enough or not really giving it the time it deserves. I want to say that that's different because often when we talk about recovery, individuals feel that, oh, I did a cool down after my workout, and maybe they did it for 2 to 3 minutes. Or we say that we did a warm up before our workout, and maybe we spent 2 to 5 minutes getting a proper warm up for however long we plan to exercise. Very commonly in athletes, they'll be exercising for 2, 3, or 4 hours a day. They might have a lifting session, they might have a running session, they might have a team sports session, and a lot of you individuals who do this yourself might have the same thing. On top of that, you will have to do other things throughout the day besides just what you're kind of passionate for, work, school, things of that nature that go outside of the athletic realm. These can impact your recovery if you're not planning your proper warm-ups and cool-downs. The reason why this is the second most common mistake is often people are just not spending enough time doing so. If you're going to run 5 miles, spending 50 yards to warm up doesn't really seem like it's enough. If you're going to do a proper cool-down after you've done an hour of activity, that proper cool-down really shouldn't consist of 5 to 6 minutes of stretching. As we're talking about here is kind of just doing a comparison between the time you're spending working towards your recovery as compared to the time you're spending to breaking down your muscles. If you're spending this much time exercising and training to possibly break down your muscles, you're not getting nearly as enough time to help your muscles recover from the trauma that you just done to them. This ties into intensity, and this ties into uh, how often you're doing this throughout the week. But the second most common mistake that we see is, again, allotting 5 to 10 minutes a day to your recovery while exercising for 1 to 2 hours a day. This obviously will go in eventually into a deficit to where you will continue to feel sore or continue to break down your muscles more and more throughout the week. So by the end of the week, you're no longer able to do anything. While if you did have a proper recovery, you'd be able to continue gaining extra days and expediting your process to training. Because that's really what recovery is about. If you recover correctly, we have the best ways to train and train faster. We kind of talked about the common mistakes here. When we go into tools, there's a lot of popular tools that we are going to kind of do a brief overview, why they're popular, what they're used for, and how they kind of got their popularity. I think one of the easiest ones to go over first is probably going to be stretching straps. Those straps are very effective. They help you get yourself into comfortable positions and really be able to leverage yourself into greater flexibility. One of the reasons why flexibility is so key is that is one of the first things you lose whenever you're actually doing activity on your own and building muscle. That is because if you're not forcing yourself to maintain your range of motion, when you see these big lifters or runners, one of the first things they lose is their flexibility in their upper body or lower bodies. As you lose flexibility, you lose the ability to transmit that same amount of force over a greater distance. So you end up losing overall power, and you end up doing essentially less work within the same thing that you're trying to do. Foam rollers is probably the next most popular. You'll hear foam rollers a lot as being something that people actively want to use, and many of you have them at your homes yourself. Foam rollers are great. There's a lot of things that people feel that foam rolling can do, but historically, we'll kind of go over just a little bit of kind of truths and myths of this. One thing that they kind of credited foam rollers for is helping kind of push or get rid of some of the old blood that's within the muscles. No, I wouldn't say that's something that you can really say that an outside force can do. Obviously, when you look at massage and things like that, you can massage muscles to help them relax, but overall, they're not actually greatly aiding in the flow of the blood within your body. That's primarily your circulatory system. Obviously, this is something that you'd be able to do on your own, but it's really not something that the foam roller on its own does. So it's hard to really claim that it's something that does primarily. The second aspect that they talk about is actually the breaking up of knots or spasms and things like that, or adhesions that might be in the muscle. Technically, it's one of the maybes. Technically speaking, if you need to foam roll for a minimum of 10 minutes, if you're trying to break up any kind of adhesions or any kind of knots that you worked into your muscles, and you must do it in a skilled way in order to get this out, that historically people don't really do, and there's not a lot of evidence backing it. But again, it is something that is theoretically possible if you do it properly and for the proper amount of time. What foam rolling is really, really great for, again, and why we do endorse it and why we say it's so important, is that one, it gets you to actively think about your recovery. Two, it gets you to find where you might have trouble areas that you need to currently work on. It will give a light massage of this tissue to help break up areas that might still have dead blood cells in them. So you are able to get blood flowing a little bit more efficiently. But again, it's still your body that's doing the vast majority of this work. It can do this in a number of ways. One, just being pressure, similar to massage. Other can be through vibration or heat, depending on the foam roller that you're using. These are able to really break down and move out things that you necessarily would have to use your own hands to do. This is really great and primarily used for kind of that secondary soreness people feel. And they feel like this is where foam rolling helps out the most. It's not going to really gain you any flexibility, but it is going to save you some soreness possibly that you might be feeling in the following days. Along the same line of foam rollers are kind of massage balls and kind of every device under that area. It might be something small, it might be something large, it might be just a little knob that helps work out an area. But all of these things kind of work in a similar way and helping relieve spasm within your muscles to allow your muscle to relax and allow blood to flow better throughout them. Again, these are great little tools. I wouldn't necessarily invest a lot of money in them, but if it's something that you can spare $10, $20, something like that, I think a lot of those minor tools can be really effective in helping you with your overall recovery. I don't really want to go too much into some other tools, but obviously if there's other things you'd like to learn about, there's other recovery tools you'd like us to kind of go over. When this is posted up on YouTube, by all means, just kind of throw something in the comments and we'll do a follow-up video on it. Right now, when it comes to recovery, we're going to touch on what we touched on earlier, but a little bit more in depth. We're going to talk on the importance of warm-up and cool-down and why that plays such a big factor in recovery. Some of these things are really just to kind of give you a better knowledge of your body and make you more aware of the things that are going on in your body. A great example of this is if you were to start doing a warm-up and walking around every day, you weren't feeling any pain, you weren't having any problems, and suddenly now the act of running or jumping or whatever it is, the activity that you're going to do, it may use a greater range of motion than what you may have previously been doing throughout your day. Living throughout your day, you don't need to do too incredibly much in order just to kind of get through the day, depending on the job you have. But now as you go into exercise, you may find that as you use these greater range of motions, suddenly something pops up. Maybe there's a pain in your shoulder, maybe there's a pain in your back, maybe there's a pain in your leg, something along those lines that now you're saying, oh, I don't know where this came from. I don't know when it started. I don't know how it happened. I don't remember actually hurting this. This is one of those areas where it gives you time to kind of figure out how your body's feeling and where you're at. If you just went straight into exercise, you can find this out while you're currently underweight or currently in a place where it could be dangerous to yourself to find this out, and you might need your spotter's help. Again, by finding this out during your warm-up, it gives you the chance to actually go directly in. It kind of goes directly into working on that specific area. And you can now say, maybe I do need to stretch a little bit more here. Maybe I do need to warm up a little bit more here. Maybe I do need to take a day off for whatever this is before you can actually injure yourself more. In these situations, every day that you gain is another day that you can train. Every day that you lose is kind of 2 days that you can't, if you kind of think about it. Because you have the first day where you injured yourself, and then you have the second day where you're still recovering. So we always try to make sure that everything that we do is to get us as many days of training as we possibly can have, because that's what you're doing it for. You're trying to have a healthier life. You're trying to have a better overall fitness level, and it's an important thing that we work on this. Now, as we go into a few other areas, it is important to mention that within our warm-up, one of the more common things to do would be to start with some type of a heating, some people a cooling effect, but for the vast majority would be a heating effect. The great thing about localized healing is kind of what we just previously talked about. It's going to allow us to aid in kind of increasing our overall circulation in that area, and help us loosen up and maybe find some trouble areas that we have some issues with before we're actually going out into our activity. Again, now as we go into cool downs, that incorporates more of our icing and secondary exercises in order to make sure that everything is still good. When we're looking at our cool down aspects, that's where we talk more primarily about static stretching. We don't want to be doing things that are necessarily allowing us to gain up any more abuse to our muscles, anything that's breaking us down anymore. We want our intensity to be relatively low. I would say 50% of what our previous intensity was as we were doing anything within the workout itself. So that way we know we're not exerting ourselves as hard as we were doing previously, and we're allowing our body to just continue circulating, continue getting out old blood cells, bring in new blood cells, help repair some of the things that we've already broken down. And then if you did have any pain or any kind of soreness while you were doing this, and you want to try to avoid some of that soreness for the following day, a lot of people are a big believer in icing down those areas. Um, I've always been a little bit more on the fence about this. And I've always kind of said, let's chalk it up to your personal preference. If you're someone that loves to ice down after exercise because you think it makes you feel great, then I think it's something you should go for. I've always had the mindset that when you build up a muscle, you want to break it down and then you want to allow blood flow to go into it to then repair and rebuild. When we're icing down, we're trying to contradict that in kind of a sense. So if you don't need to, I think it's something where I like to kind of often allow for the body to relax on its own. And then if I feel like I've maybe overdone it that day and that inflammation process within the body is not in check or out of control, we may use ice to kind of help us with that. If we feel like, oh, this cool down process or this inflammation process that we've now started within our muscles is completely in check, then we can just kind of go on throughout our day, have some static stretching, and then still later on in the day, we can choose to ice if we want to later. But again, on a theoretical sense, the idea is you want to help build that muscle. And then obviously I want to kind of argue both ways here. Icing down one area for 10 minutes is not going to stop all circulation by any means to that area. The muscle will still be able to build. It'll still be able to get a positive result from this workout. It's just some people argue the idea of, is it as good or is it going to give you 100%? I think, again, like I said, it goes down to personal preference. If it's something that you feel helps you, then it's something that you should do. If it's something that you're not kind of sure if you feel a difference on, then why bother? That time can be spent better doing other things in the recovery process to kind of help yourself have the best possible time you have moving forward. That kind of ties in to a little bit about thinking about some of the basic mistakes that we make when it comes to also working out. I think it's important to mention in kind of this whole recovery time frame that as we're thinking about our warm-up, as we're thinking about our cool down, we're kind of taking a brief step back and saying, in this entire process, are we doing everything right? When we're taking that kind of idea and saying, hey, are we doing everything right? I think it's really important to talk about the gear you're using as well. And now, again, we're not here to promote any type of expensive gear or any type of specific gear that you should be using. What we're talking about specifically is the maintenance of your gear. You see this a lot in runners. Shoes are roughly good for anywhere from 200 to 250 miles, depending on how quickly you beat them up. That being said, some individuals can do that mileage in 2 months. Some individuals can do that in 4 to 6 months. It all depends on how active you are. Shoes can wear down depending on your body weight and things like that, but also how well they were made. But typically speaking, they'll be good for about 200 to 250 miles. It's important to understand that if you have a running shoe that you've designated for running and you buy one pair of shoes a year, after 6 months, or if your feet start hurting at the end of every year, that would be a good indication to you that you need to start changing your shoes earlier. It's hard to get the most out of your training if when you go out for a run, your feet hurt because you're not thinking about, are my shoes really ready to take on the work that my body's about to deliver? That being said, in the same way, it's important to look at the other way for kind of lifting and things of that nature. I know everyone kind of has lucky things that they like and different things that they get used to over time, but it is important to kind of take a step back and have an unbiased opinion and say, hey, are these still doing what I need them to do? Often people will have lifting gloves that they love to use because they fit well and they're broken in and they're exactly the way they like it. But over time, they might still get a blister in one area because they've worn down the glove in that area. For some individuals, because they love the way the glove fits so much and they feel like they have a great grip on everything, they're going to keep lifting with that, and they might use some other thing to try to address the blister that they're getting. Again, this is something that seems silly, but I'm sure this is something that many people have done because we see it all the time. It is more beneficial to either change out whatever that gear is. And this can be the same with a lifting strap. This can be the same with a belt. This could even be the same as something as like compression shorts. You have these compression shorts that you love, but they're worn down. And now it's actually starting to make it that you're not able to run nearly as well, or maybe you're having issues and you're having other things that are kind of developing over time. We want to kind of take a mental note of these things, and we always want to try to change them out before things become an issue. We want to say that, hey, we do love the things that we like, but if they start to have an issue, it may be time to retire them as your quote unquote workout stuff. And it might be something that you do, that you still wear or use more casually. Talking on this whole taking a step back and looking at a larger idea of what we're doing, that's how we kind of tie in diet as well. Again, this isn't really talking about what diet you should be doing. This is more talking about whether or not you're thinking about your diet is going to incorporate into your recovery process. Some of the fine things that we talk about here is one, just your water intake. What kind of fluids are you drinking throughout the day? And are you primarily trying to get as much water in as you can? For many individuals, they may find that they drink mostly juice, coffee, snacks, sodas, things like that. And that's primarily the large amount of liquid that they actually ingest, and very little of it is actually water. Proper hydration is very key in circulation because it has to do with the viscosity of your blood. It has to do with how easily and readily everything will flow around your body in order for things to be transported out of your muscles and recover. I know this seems like a very simple and obvious thing, but it is one of the most commonly seen problems is hydration levels. On a second area, it's, are you hydrating to replenish the things that you're sweating out? So as you come into summer, and really as you come into any change in temperature, your body needs to acclimatize. Now, we're not talking about actually your body needing to somehow get better at running in the heat. It actually needs to become more efficient at just dispersing the heat. So normally, most individuals, when summer first starts and the weather starts to make a significant a significant rise, they'll find that they will sweat out a lot more and it will be saltier. You know, their sweat itself, especially if it's running down their face and it's something that they end up tasting, it'll be a much saltier type of sweat. This is a good indication that your body is not quite ready for the heat that you're running in. Again, this is not a problem for running, but it is something you need to think about, that you're letting go of extra electrolytes because your body's trying to find a way to normalize its temperature, and it's not doing it efficiently at this point. And you need to start gaining some extra electrolytes in order to make sure that you're replenishing those things. For individuals with a good diet, you might actually have to go and think about having a Gatorade or having things that will replace your electrolytes, like bananas and things of that nature. But the vast majority of us will have enough salts and sugars in our diets that it really shouldn't be a large issue for us. On the second thing is always the amount of water. One of the things that we highly encourage when it comes to recovering on a day-to-day basis from your workouts is we like to just do a weigh-in based on change. It doesn't really matter what weight you're going in with. It really matters the difference in your weight coming out. So just to throw out easy numbers here, if you weigh 200 pounds going into a run, and when you finish that run, we found that many of our athletes will be down 4 to 5 pounds. So they'll be 195 coming out of that run. There's no possible way that you could actually burn that much fat while you're doing that run, even though you're doing exercise. The reality is you're sweating out the vast majority of that weight. So this water weight needs to be replenished in order for you to recover correctly. Because as we said, that directly ties in to the viscosity of your blood. When you think about the amount of water that you have to drink to get back 5 pounds, you're looking at roughly a little over a gallon, because a gallon would be 8 pounds of water. This is a really easy thing to recover with throughout the day. You're looking at something like 64 ounces, 80 ounces, something around there. And if you measure that out throughout the day and you're saying 12 ounces at a time, you're going to have, seven to eight full 12-ounce cups of water in order to get this weight back. It isn't something that's necessarily very hard to do, but if you're not actively thinking about it and you're not thinking about your water intake, that is a very daunting task to say, oh, I should have had 7 to 8 of these already, but I finished my run 3 hours ago. I haven't had any. I could have easily had 2 to 3, and now it's an hour before I go to sleep, and I know that I'm dehydrated. And this is going to affect you on your future runs and your future activity moving forward. That's kind of a brief stint into how hydration and fluid and things like that can tie into recovery. There is a lot of impacts that food and your actual diet will have directly on recovery. We'll go into that a lot more in depth. I know if you check our schedule, we have one saying optimize nutrition, and specifically talking about how your diet and hydration will directly tie into how you can have better, more efficient workouts and allow your body to recover and perform in a better way. We're not trying to go too long on this. One of the last things we'll do is we're going to kind of talk about tying everything together. When this is posted on YouTube in the comments, we're going to pretty much put something in called a recovery day. In this recovery day, it's basically the thought process is that when you have a day off, or if you have a time within your week that you consider this to be your recovery process because you're exercising 7 days a week, but say you have 2 light days, it's basically a scale where we have, if you go into the chat, we have it listed there. But it's basically a list of exercises that you can do, and everything has a point value. So example, let me just share the screen here. So hopefully when we record this, you'll be able to see it as well as we kind of show it. If you wanted to go out and you wanted to get 100 points in a day, which is roughly the goal of a proper recovery day, it's something very simple as you can get 40 points for a 20-minute jog. You may want to hop on your bike. Also on that day, again, for another 40 minutes, we'll get you another 40 points. Now, I've already hit 80 points. So overall, this has been a good recovery day. Again, we're not looking to do an intense bike ride here. We're looking for a low intensity to moderate intensity jog and light bike ride to get the circulation and the circulatory system going. A great way for me to break down a really easy 100-point recovery day would be I would wake up and I'd start my day with a 40-minute bike ride just to kind of get the blood flowing. I'd probably come home, take a shower, then I'd start to get ready, and I want to get ready for work. Now, I know that I want to jog at the end of the day to get my last 40 points in. So that means at some point in the day, I need to get 20 more points. Now, I can put in a dynamic stretch or a dynamic warm-up before my jog later on, and that would get me 20 more points for either one of those. Or I could even take some time later today and do a foam roll circuit, and that would get me another 20 points. We go into more in depth in our recovery day breakdown of what is a dynamic warm-up, what is a dynamic stretch, what is a static stretch, and how you can get these point values in a very simple way. Most of these things take under 20 minutes. Or I can get a little bit more creative and I can say, okay, in the morning, right after I finish my bike ride, I can get a 20-gram protein shake that's going to have 20 grams of protein in there. And I'm going to crush that right after my run. And now I'm already at 55 points for the day. I know that I may or may not want to finish something out at the end of the day, but I am going to drink a gallon of water throughout the day. That'll give me another 10 points. Now this means I'm going to be 10 points or 5 points above my overall goal if I get my jog in later. But it depends if I feel like getting my jog in later. I still have enough different variety in here to where I can say dynamic warm-up before my bike ride or just a nice easy static stretch at the end of the night. Those two things could also get me over my 100 points craving, or I can just kind of break down a few other areas. The goal of this overall plan is to get you actively thinking about how you're going to recover to get ready for your future work that you want to do. The important thing about thinking about your future work is, again, the more time that we save is going to be the more time that we're able to stay training. And the more time that we prevent injuries and prevent soreness is the higher level that we can train at. So if you think about a 6-month period, if I had to take off 10 days due to soreness and injury, someone else can be 10 days ahead or almost 2 weeks ahead if they were able to get a proper recovery. When you're talking about actually getting your training goals and working towards the goal that you want to do, those 10 days can be your make or break. We like to compare this to someone who maybe is trying to start a half marathon and they're running for the first time and they're trying to get new goals and get themselves out and being more active. And since they're one of the first individuals that are going to make mistakes with their recovery because they're not thinking about it, they may really find this a daunting task as that half marathon date or a 10K, call it whatever you like, whatever event you're training for. As you start to get closer and closer and you're losing days from soreness, fatigue, maybe a pulled muscle, things like that, that date's not going anywhere. And as you get closer and closer, you're going to be less and less ready the more days that you need to take off. Now, again, we're never talking about overtraining, but we're talking about actively trying to look at your recovery to have the best possible outcomes so you can have the best possible chance for success. if we could get you those 10 days back over a 3 to 4 month period and make you feel that much more confident that you're going to crush your 10K, crush your half marathon, whatever it is that you want to do, that's the goal of a program like this. It's in order to get you that much closer to your goals and get you that much more confident in what you're doing so that you can be fitter and have a more fulfilling exercise experience. That's going to be pretty much everything for today. Again, as we post this online, if you have any other questions or anything that you'd like us to go more in depth with, we are going to have a number of other series that we're doing. You can always come in and see us Monday through Friday doing different things like our cardio pump, our car workouts, our dance videos, whatever it is that you may want to see. But if you want to break down of anything that we kind of touched on, look at our schedule, see when it's coming up. If it's something you want sooner, by all means, we'll try to kind of give you whatever you need. All right. Have a nice night.